So I started designing about 3 years ago, and I don't know who I'm designing for. And that makes me a little bit confused because I want to be unique and I want to be special. I want to be seen as like a genius. But does that exclude other people from enjoying things as well?
Yeah, there's two roads, really. It's interesting because you start out always as a student, kind of thinking, oh, I've got this like amazing idea, be it original or not, but it's a thought that you think is unique to yourself. And as you kind of go through your career, sort of might deviate quite a lot because you have a lot of outside influence. And I think today, especially, I mean, when I started, there was so much less noise, but today there's far more input that you get from so many different sources, from Instagram, Pinterest, the web, everywhere, even just out on the street, stores, the number of brands there are, that it can make things quite noisy. Like you don't really
Yeah.
sort of understand, like, oh, that looks really cool. Should I be doing that? Oh, but should I do that? That looks cool. And you can deviate quite a lot. Or you just go completely die hard and you're like Rick Owens.
Yeah.
And it's just one track and it's a very, very specific customer. And it's a longer road because you actually need to cultivate your audience much more. But I feel like fashion's sort of in those two camps now, where people are influenced a lot more by what's going on and what's happening, and let's say the ecosystem of fashion and street style and influencers versus being the very sort of defined and very clear concept of what the brand is, especially as a person. I think when myself, I've always gone into brands, so I've been able to pull from a history or an identity or a heritage. But when you're starting on your own, it is so much harder because you have to find what's unique to you and what's your personal take on things. And it can be small things, I think, where it could be a specific collar shape or a specific shoulder shape that becomes your signature. So I think there are ways to define it, but it takes several seasons to kind of fine tune that and then get a reaction from your consumer. And then you can start building on that. And that's how sort of brands evolve and become stronger over time.
I think for me, it's like partially a lack of patience in a way.
Yeah.
Because I can barely make myself happy. Like, what am I? How am I supposed to make all of you happy?
Yeah.
And that's tricky. I find it daunting at times, especially with the internet. And I'm still at that early stage where I have to read all the comments and take in all the feedback as though
comments are tricky.
you know we're all colleagues. When
because everyone's got an opinion and everyone's entitled to an opinion. I never think that if somebody makes an opinion, it's right or wrong. Sometimes opinions can be quite harsh, and you want to be kind of considerate of that, but also really know what you want to achieve as well.
how do you develop that empathy I think when you design women's wear, obviously you have a first person's perspective on how things should be from this perspective, but you've designed men's wear as well very successfully. How do you extrapolate that?
I mean, it's interesting because I've designed for runway and now I design for real life in a way. Like this, the average guy on the street. And so now I have to think of things very differently because I'm designing for a global audience. So it could be somebody who is 5'4" and a completely different body shape to someone who's in Sweden who's 6'3". And I have to make sure that whatever product I'm designing has the versatility that it can work on all different body shapes. So it does create issues for sure, but I do think in the end, there's I guess a universal thing that I always think of when I start the process and look at prototypes and reviewing it on a fit model is, do I want to buy that? Clothes are a kind of emotional gut response. If you're like going through a rack like that, you'll stop on something because maybe you like the texture, maybe you like the color, or there's just like something alluring about the design. And so I always think it's very, very intuitive shopping. And so I really believe that, if you look at something and you're like, that looks great, then there's something there
Yeah.
that just is like, that's a good one. And then you'll put something else on and you'll be like, I'm not really sure. Maybe not. It's usually not worth pursuing too much.
Nowadays, so much goes through e-commerce. Do you find that interaction where you're trying to get that emotional response from someone is very different with the presentation online?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Does that affect design?
Not at the beginning, no. I think it's more actually later when I do the styling. So I think designing it, I only think of what it looks like on the person right in front of me, because in the end, that's what everybody does when they buy it. They put it on and they say, I like it or I don't like it. So it's about the person. But for let's say the clickbait online, that for me is about then how you style the product. So maybe it's even something as basic as a white shirt, but then it will be how I accessorize it, or, those kind of things that make the difference between something looking really current, new and modern and something that looks maybe just a little bit regular.
I'm beginning to have a few insecurities about that, because my taste has gone more towards texture, drape, and I find that my skill level or interest level in color is not high. So I'm gravitating more towards blanks. However, how that's presented and captured on e-commerce is, that's a black jacket, that's a black shirt, so what? And there's so much so what that would be immediate and apparent when you see it on a rack, but it's hard online, I think.
It's hard online, but then I have to say, I think all you need is like one piece that just creates the curiosity. And ultimately, across every brand I've worked through in my history, the top selling colors generally are black, white, blue, and gray. So even over time, it doesn't really change that much. But you just need that one piece that's going to give that immediate, like, oh, what's that? The interest level, the desirability to then click through the other more basic colors. And so for me, I always think, what is that taster, the little appetizer amongst all of the product that I've got that will get the attention and the excitement, and then I'll sell all the rest.
I think I know that I'm still new or still early in my journey, because I frequently still think I'm a genius.
Everyone's their own little genius in their own way.
I'm just so impressed with myself sometimes. I'm like, oh, you're so good. And then when I actually have the idea and I try to make it an actual physical product, I sort of quickly realize I'm not a genius, because the fabric's too expensive, or the pattern making is too complex and the factory will not do it. Or we can not compromise at all, but it'll be $1,000 when it's supposed to be $200. And I very quickly realized that my great ideas end up being quite bad products in a way. And how do you preserve the original idea when every step of the way it just seems like you're making compromises?
Yeah, I still have to do that today. But, it's interesting because I think throughout my career, sometimes the best, most successful products have come out of restriction. And it's hard when you have everything at your disposal. You actually become, I know this sounds awful, but you can be a little bit more of I don't want to say a lazy designer, but you don't think of the outcome at the end. You just think, what's going to look great? What's going to look amazing on a picture? What's going to look cool on the runway? And I feel, there's an element of fashion right now that definitely is in that lane. And the reality is, though, that none of that ends up on the street. None of it ends up on a person. So in the end, it's a sense of theatre, but not reality. And I guess my focus has really shifted, especially in the last 5 years, that I began my journey in fashion because I wanted to design clothes to wear, and I wanted to design clothes that I saw other people buying and wearing that I designed. And it's like the greatest joy to be on the street and go, oh, look, he's wearing that, or
Yeah.
she's got that on.
And that must happen all the time.
It does now, yes. But it didn't for a while. And so I think that's the funny thing, that, you know, luxury seems this huge thing that everybody wants to work for. And of course, there's wonderful things about having, you know, no limitations, no budget. You just design whatever you like. But actually, really great product comes out of as, you know, a sense of restriction in terms of price, color palette, shape, because you have to really focus your idea and distill it down into what is the perfect sort of rendition of this. So it makes you think about what's really contemporary, what looks really cool right now, what silhouettes are really kind of going to flatter the wearer, but, you know, make them look great. And I think back to my time at Chloe, actually a lot, where I had no branding, nothing, absolutely nothing to work with. And the task at the house was, you need to make it feel Chloe immediately. It's like you look at it and it's like, that's Chloe.
Right.
And it's a good exercise because you would sit there and go, okay, has that got the essence? Has it got something about the cut, the fit, the fabric, the shape, the silhouette, that if that girl is wearing it, you're like, oh yeah, she looks like she's wearing Chloe. No branding on it whatsoever. And I think today, as I said, I think it can be this sort of distraction from having branding and logos, because it just makes it easy to identify things. And so we have become a little bit more lazy about creating clothing identity. And I think that's where you are right now, where you're trying to find that identity in your silhouette and in your cut and in your shape. But I think back to Japanese designers like Yohji, Issey. If you put all their products in black on a rack, you'd be able to pick them out.
Yes, for sure.
Easily.
Yes.
So you can do it, but it's a refinement of process.
How long does that take? I suppose the answer is, how long's a piece of rope?
Yeah, exactly.
I've answered that.
It's an ever-evolving kind of thing. But it takes time. And it's something that it's always shifting a little bit too because of fashion.
But I suppose your task at Chloe, when you have this, in the back of your mind, you have this engine of commerce that needs to go. How do you negotiate exploring that truthfully and honestly, but also going, oh, actually, I've got to sell some clothes here?
It's a sort of a balancing act of doing something that you feel feels really right, in terms of that's a new expression this season, that's about the identity of the collection that I'm launching, that's also about something that I feel feels right, that I want to wear right now, versus that fabric's too expensive, that length is too long, it won't sell, all these types of other things. So you have to kind of create this like perfect balance between the two. And I think for me, that has come through time and experience of working, trying things on myself, wearing them myself. The best exercise ever for fashion commercially, wear it yourself for a few weeks.
Yes.
Because once you wear it, you're like, oh God, that pocket's annoying. Oh, that's too low.
Exactly.
Oh, actually, this is like really bunchy and you fix all the problems immediately.
Yep.
And there's not enough of that happens in fashion right now. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, Uniqlo was a really interesting exercise to come to and really understand like how extraordinarily successful the brand is. It's through that process of taking 2 months, we prototype things and wear test them. And so whenever it gets to the shop, so many of the issues or problems have already been fixed before it hits the store. And that's about customer satisfaction. And so, if a customer wears it and they're like, God, this is great, it like doesn't wrinkle or whatever it is, they'll come back and buy another one.
I think a lot about successful things. And it seems that for certain things like t-shirts, solved, very successful. People love the shape, keep buying it.
Yeah.
How does that still interesting to you when you feel like you've solved it? Does success kill creativity in a way?
No, because in a lot of ways, I think, especially as a small brand, I think it gives you breathing space.
Yeah.
Because then you've got a solid business in one item that will help kind of fund your development. So I never think that having a classic, let's say, or something that, you've resolved to be your version of the perfect t-shirt, because if that in the end helps you be able to do more creative things, I think fantastic. It's such a relief to have that. And I think everyone strives for that in their business, actually, is to find the item that just consistently sells no matter what.
But does your attitude towards that particular thing get affected by success?
No, because I just think, well, there's a reason why it sells.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why people keep coming back and buying it. And I had a similar thing, in the previous houses I had, where maybe it was like a knitwear piece or something like that, where it just consistently always sold. And maybe I might tweak it a little bit. Maybe I might change the neck trim one season, or maybe I might make a little different hem detail at the side, or just like a little tweak. But the essence of the garment kind of remain the same. And I think that sort of consistency brings a lot of trust to the brand. And I think trust is a very important element of being successful in business.
In terms of guardrails that you were talking about, it just seems like there's two big guardrails of cost, keeping things democratic that people can afford it. There's also democracy of taste, so that most people can look at it and go like, that's something I would wear. Which is harder? Which is a bigger guardrail? But has that changed?
I think it's changed. I would say now it's cost. Yeah. Because I think it's not realistic to think that, we can have endless high-priced product. There's just not enough people who can afford it. Really, truly, honestly.
I'm quite confused looking at how things are getting more expensive and our ability to buy normal products is decreasing, actually.
Yeah.
And it just seems like they're going off in two different directions.
Two extremes.
Yes.
Two extremes. And I think I long for the days, back when I started out in fashion and I could save up 2 or 3 months' salary and afford a designer item. I think today I'd have to save for a year.
Yeah.
Probably. If I was on the same salary, if not longer.
Yes. And like the emotional durability of the item is like 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, what have I done?
Yeah. So then it sort of begs the question, like, who is the audience for this? And I think that's why in the end, luxury, you're selling much more classical pieces on a bigger scale than you are fashion, because the cost versus use is just so low at this point. That you buy something for 3,000-4,000, you really have to make sure that you only use it for like 2 or 3 years to get the cost value out of it.
That's right.
The reality of fashion is today we want to love and wear our things and feel great with them. So I like the fact that before this period of time, we used to have truly sort of different levels of fashion that were affordable in different ways, and actually you could pick across many different sort of segments and create a really great look and still have some designer items at mid-price as well as high price. But today I think that's why let's say the lower end of the market has become more interesting, and particularly here in Asia.
Yeah.
I find it super dynamic.
Why is that?
Because it's just that much more affordable.
Yes.
So I love, for instance, going to Seoul in Korea, because almost every store I go to, and I'm just putting to the side any luxury brand at this point. I'm talking about local Korean brands. Everything's affordable. Everything. I feel like I'm back in the 90s, where I would go shopping and I'd be like, oh, I like that pant, and oh, that's a great sweater.
You can buy it.
And I could kind of go to all different sorts of stores and put a whole outfit together and not have spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you sense it in the street there, because you see everyone is in like a lot of fashion. And so it's not a lot of basics, because they can afford something that's well designed. And there's all these little brands popping up.
So what have they figured out that we haven't?
To make it affordable. And actually most of what you probably know Korean style. Most of Korean style is like black, grey, white. It's really simple colours. And it's really about shape and cut. That's what they respond to. And so I find that really, really interesting. And actually, when I went to Shanghai last year, there was a similar feeling I felt kind of coming up also in China. And so I think that to me is missing in the West. And I find that if I think back to my time when, I was starting out in fashion, I was able to shop like that. But I think today's consumer in the West finds it really difficult to shop like that now. It's those like niche little kind of designer brands. There were so many more of them back then, but today there aren't. So I think I would encourage you to do that, because I think we need more of that, because that makes the fashion business much more dynamic and exciting.
I find making affordable things, like philosophically, I am completely on board. Of course. I find it very hard to do in practice because I'm so small, and the minimums for fabrics and factories is just, it really is a grind to get to that point. So I'm finding a lot of difficulty with that. And I don't think, it's not really a question, it's just a statement of fact. It's just where I am right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And especially making things in Japan, it is literally double my previous experience of making things in China.
Yeah.
And there's no way I can negotiate it beyond I'm going to take less money and the prices still have to go up.
Yeah.
And that's the decision I've made, I guess.
But I think you can have a bit of both. For me, I think you can have some exclusive, like very, small run, limited product that is made exclusively in Japan. Lots of history, integrity, specialized materials. That is like an exclusive drop, and I would do it as something that would last a year. So then you can buy your minimum quantity, keep it for a year. But then also have product that's very easy to buy, that you could,
that's
a new consumer to come in and buy something at a lower price point. And I think that's the struggle for a lot of young designers today, is knowing how to structure their brand in a way that they actually have a good sort of cash flow ecosystem.
That's right.
In order to keep going.
I did not realize how much of it was about managing tempo and pace.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought it was all about whether you're a good designer or not.
No, and fashion is really hard because you have to pay so many people up front.
That's right.
So your initial outlay is huge.
Correct.
And you don't even know if you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
It's like, really tough.
It's
very difficult.
It's like launching all these planes and you don't know whether they're going to land.
Yeah.
On time or at all.
It's a very difficult business. Like there's many other businesses where you can start with a very low threshold of debt, but with fashion, no. And that's when they always say, oh, how much would it take to start a fashion brand? Like, add lots of zeros.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's so
whatever you
difficult.
think, add a zero at least.
At least, if not two. And, you think about the people you have to employ, the machinery that you have to hire, the factories you go to, the minimum quantities, the fabrics. Then, I want that in 3 colors. Times that by 3. No,
I'm getting anxiety just thinking. This is triggering to
sewing
me.
thread, zippers, buttons, labels,
Yeah.
packaging, coat hangers, shipping, boxes. You're just like, when you actually, it's an extraordinary outlay of physical, mental, and emotional effort. And I think it's highly underestimated what goes into making something.
Yes.
Looks so nothing.
Yep.
Oh, it's just a t-shirt.
Yeah,
The
well,
process to get to that end product
it's out of control.
is enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really applaud people who start things because I think it takes a lot of guts to go through that. It's a really tough business. And then let's not even, forget the mistakes along the way. I mean, it doesn't matter
Yes.
what company I've worked at.
Yeah.
There's been a product in production, there's been a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you either have to write it off or you have to mark it down, or, a fabric has arrived with a giant fault all the way through the bolt.
Yeah.
And that it's you can't anticipate it.
No.
And then someone's placed orders and then you have to disappoint them and say, I can't deliver. This happens all the time.
Is there any way to slow down the tempo to meet your own needs whilst sustaining a business? Is something I ask myself constantly. For me, it's like I want to slow it down, but we've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
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 And for me to toy around with something until I'm personally happy might not ever happen.
No, you can't, in a way. You have to sort of say, okay, I'm happy with it at this point.
Yes.
And I feel good in it. And next season, I'm going to tweak it a little bit more.
Exactly.
And, even where I'm now at this giant scale, we'll have a fabric and we really perfect everything. But then sometimes once it's gone through and it's sold and we'll get some customer feedback or just things such as climate change. We thought the fabric was perfect, and then we go through a year like this year, where this year has been one of the hottest years ever, and we designed this fabric last year when actually it was much cooler. And so just things like that.
And the timelines are so long.
So long. And so, that fabric reacted differently from a customer point of view to what we would have thought, because it was 5 degrees hotter this year than last year. So suddenly, we need to now think this year, okay, we need to take 10 grams out of that fabric or 15 grams out just to, lighten it up so it's more breathable or more lighter for a hotter climate. So those are things we're constantly adjusting. And, that was one of the things I did when I arrived at Uniqlo, actually, was you have the classic heat tech. Which probably every one of you knows, it's been around for 20 years now. And I remember arriving and saying, I can't wear that, it's too hot. And that was the whole start of the conversation for me developing cashmere heat tech, which ended up being half the thickness, but with the same level of warmth, but more breathability. So in the end, you get a similar type product, but it's just that much lighter and more breathable for a more contemporary environment now, because that original heat tech was developed 20 years ago when the climate was really different. So we're always adjusting things based on what's
an amazing job.
Yeah.
To have that at your arsenal, like technological.
Yeah. It is a really, I find that now I'm a designer and a bit of a scientist.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Which is kind of cool. I never thought that would be like part of my job, but I find it so interesting to sit there and kind of go, okay, so if we take this out of that, what does that bring, and they talk about, say, for things like puff tech, there's a special scientific test that we do, which is called a CLO test, CLO, and it basically it's a type of temperature reading, so we can tell how warm it is, and then we have different levels of warmth for different thicknesses and gram weights, and we test. So I've got all these charts and data points that I look at. I love that. Yeah, and I'm quite enjoying sort of the little scientific side.
Yeah. Oh, you're obviously a fabric person.
But I'm a total fabric nerd in that way. I start from, my start of my career was knitwear. So because I started with knitting, I start from the single source, the yarn.
Yes.
And the fiber. So when I was a knitwear designer, I used to design yarns from the fiber point.
Incredible.
So because of that, I'm a bit of a textile nerd, because I know that, just switching the fiber count here can affect the way that then twists, and then adding certain twists to it, they'll create...
There's so many iterations that can end up completely different things.
Yeah. And so you end up with either a super supple, very nervous fabric, or you might end up with something really stiff and rigid. So you can, from like just a little ball of fluff, create something
Yes.
that can be three-dimensional. So there is a kind of magic to it. It's
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
doing
amazing.
that at a very elementary scale, because we're doing things in Japan now where they don't give us the fabric book anymore. They give us the yarn book.
Yeah,
And we're getting to mix different warps and wefts,
which is really cool.
different fibers.
Yeah.
And I'm having such a great time. I also did want to ask you about designing for Japanese people. Obviously, there's a size
No, but it is
difference.
different.
Yeah, like in terms of taste, you mean?
Taste, yeah, it's different.
Did it surprise you?
I mean, I expected it to a certain extent because obviously culturally it's so different here to the West, but it's also something that is to do with how to describe it, sort of a societal kind of expectation of how to dress as well. I always find it fascinating to think that basically 100 years ago they were still wearing kimonos.
Yeah.
This is Western clothes is a very new concept here.
Yeah.
In the same way that in India, up until maybe 50 years ago, there weren't really many Western clothes. It was really, more national dress. And so there's a part of that which I'm very conscious to kind of preserve a little bit, because it's a bit their identity.
Yes.
And for me as a designer, Western designer in Japan, working for a Japanese company, I try to have that in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Will this work in Japan? Because it's just a different style of dressing, especially for women. For men, not so much, but for women, hugely different.
Yeah.
So it's less body conscious, it's more covered. Also, they prefer more sun protection.
Yes.
Paler, softer colors, or stark black. You don't see many Japanese people wearing red.
This idea that there is a Western criteria of what beauty is, I think. And there is this idea of like symmetry or this certain colors have harmony with each other. And that comes from centuries of appreciating art in a certain way. And I think that the Japanese perspective follows their own tradition. And there's asymmetry. There's less things about color. There's more things about shape and form. And that translates to kimonos. But that with this quick right turn into Western clothing, the criteria hasn't changed, but the clothes have. I still think that if you design for a Japanese person, you're still kind of having that echo around. The problem with me is that I didn't grow up in that tradition.
Environment.
Yeah. So I'm always having to negotiate how do I integrate all these different things, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting because even if you think about iconic Japanese designers, there's an element of history.
Yes.
In what they design. Issey with his very flat shapes, Yoji with the long forms, the big draped fabric. And I just think, there's still very much that sensibility, probably because the era of the grandparents are still around that used to potentially have some of that in their wardrobe. But I wonder going forward in the next 50, 100 years, whether that still remains, because that generation will have gone. And, I was just in an antique store in Kyoto this weekend, and there was racks and racks of dark men's kimonos. And it made me, I just stood there and looked at it, and I just thought, God, that's a part of history that's just sort of disappearing in Japan. And if I let's say compare it to the UK where I'm from, and I think about my grandparents, so my grandfather wore like tweed jackets are still around. I could still wear something that looks like my grandparents, but that's a very different equation here.
I was contacted last week by someone who's making handloom kimono silk. And they were saying, we don't have an outlet for this fabric anymore.
Yeah.
Because they'll be made to kimonos.
Yeah.
Like, are you interested in making ties? And I was like, wow. I just felt
Not
so...
really ties.
Yeah. I would love to make
Maybe
it...
something else.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what they're thinking now. It's like, you can only make ties now.
Like, what can we do with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
It's an interesting conundrum because if you think about around the world, a lot of national dress has been lost. It now becomes like
this
a
flattening.
theme party or something like,
That's right.
oh, we're going to have, you know, Austrian weekend and wear our dirndls. And,
Well, you probably
know.
would have seen more Americans running around in Kyoto with the rental kimonos.
Exactly.
Than actual Japanese.
Yes,
yeah.
which looks like Disneyland in the end, than real, you know, the real kimonos. So few and far between now. But yeah, it makes me wonder, you know, how to preserve some of that too, because there's something beautiful about having an identity in your national dress in a way.
I think subspecialization in Japanese culture is astounding to me. Like my uncle, my mum's brother, who had a restaurant, he's retired now, but he had 2 items on the menu and he ran that for 3 decades. And if you were to ask him whether his ramen was any good, he'd be like, working on it.
It was interesting. I had a conversation with somebody this weekend who was talking about the fact they visited this monastery in somewhere outside of Kyoto, and there was a dyeing mill very close to it, and they were dyeing fabric to make specific items for this monastery, robes or particular parts of some ceremonial costume. And they said that they were asking the dyer kind of, you know, how, and he's already kind of an older man, like how it's going. And he said, oh, I'm feeling so much pressure because I only have 12 years left to perfect it. And I'm just thinking, my God, you know, it's just, you know, the deadline for this particular thing is in 12 years' time, but already feels like it's not enough time to perfect it because the number of iterations that you might have to go through and that perfection. I guess, you know, it's like everything here. There's a real there's a real treasure to the time and the effort put into something. So
I feel like I shouldn't feel this way, I know, but I feel like there's all this experience I want to have in design and all these things I want to do with my, you know, my little career that I do have. And I feel like, oh shit, there's not enough time.
But you always feel like you're running out of time in fashion because everything's just so quick. It's a very fast-paced industry, so it doesn't matter which stage you're at, you always feel like, oh, there's just not enough time. Even today, I was in the office and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I had another couple of weeks to work on this. And I just know we have to move on to the next stage. You know, it's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is.
I'll keep refining it as much as I can right up until the very end. And then I'll say, okay, next season, let's then tweak it a bit more like this. Let's do something slightly different, but keep refining.
This is similar to what you were saying earlier. It's like you just have to get it good enough so that you have a chance to do a version 2.
Yeah.
In a way. Do you think some things can be solved in design, like t-shirts can be solved or jeans can be solved?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
As in like there is a full stop to it.
There are some things when you just, you know, there's a finite number of elements. there's not another button you can stick on it, a zip on it. In a way that distillation is something I have to work with all the time here because the product is essentially simple. And so there is an element of those like just millimeter changes, fabric shifts, little details in the trim, something like that. In men's, rarely. I would say once a year, we might shift something a little bit. If, let's say t-shirt, a classic t-shirt, maybe not even. We have some t-shirts that have really not changed for 5 years, 8 years.
Perfect then, in your eyes.
and the company size.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
just it sells consistently, fantastic feedback from the consumer, wearability, washability. It still looks good after 8 months of washing it 3 times a week. Then
that's
that's a
incredible.
good product.
Yeah.
So, any shift that we make to that has to be highly, highly considered. But with women's, it shifts much more quickly. So for women's wear, a definite proportion, constant proportion shifts. Maybe not the fabric or the finishing, but the proportion all the time.
Are those intervals getting shorter or longer?
Shorter, probably. Yeah. It was skinny pants 3 years ago. Now it's huge pants.
It's
And
huge.
yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
the shifts are kind of happening more quickly. And then, now it's suddenly bell bottoms. And then it's suddenly this pant. And then it's another. And it just feels like there's this feeding frenzy of newness that needs to happen that is giving rise for attention on a screen. So, we need to refresh that in different ways. I try to block that out a bit because I feel it's a bit wasteful also, but I just try to think, what can we do to this that maybe could go for another 2-3 seasons? So most of the product I'm working on now, even in women's, I try to give it at least 2 seasons, if not 3 to 4 seasons longevity before we make a shift.
Because
So
that's
a 2-year cycle.
That's the hallmark of the brand,
a
isn't
good
it?
product. Yeah,
Longevity.
exactly. Longevity. And then for my own collection, the C collection, with Uniqlo C, the whole philosophy that I built that collection on was that from one season to the next, there's always 2 or 3 colors that connect to the next season, so you can wear things together,
Yeah.
and then the next season with that season. So it creates this kind of universal wardrobe which is completely interchangeable from a color balance point of view, from a proportion point of view. So I'm constantly looking back and refining and then bringing in a new element. But I mean, I'm always wearing things from different seasons, but they all work together. I'm constantly thinking in that way. It's never a blank slate. It's always an involvement.
When it comes down to creating these things and being excited about these things, because I'm across so many different areas of my business, creativity is probably at this moment about 2%.
That is quite common from people who start their own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as a designer, the only person that would hire me as a designer is myself, which is why I'm in this pickle. So my struggle is I don't know how to put my creativity on a schedule because it seems like there's a demand for it to happen every month or so.
Yeah.
It just needs to turn on and I just need to design something. I need to refine something. But it doesn't happen like that for me.
I think for me, the most creative moments always came from working in the factory, working with the mill, working in the factory, because you sit there and you have all this stuff around you and you have the craftsman or pattern cutter or the weaver there and you talk to them about what you want and it just becomes this like melting pot of ideas. And I almost think that just reserving that quiet moment just to have that time is really, really important because that gets everything excited. So it drives you for the rest of the season when you have to do all the legwork with all the other parts of the business. Whereas that's the bit, if you kind of ring fence it to be just your creative moment, I find that really helps kind of spur you on for for all the problems that are going to come ahead, because you can keep coming back to, do you remember when at the very beginning we found that was so great? Can we come back to that? And it just becomes this sort of North Star compass for your piece when you have that exciting sort of, light bulb moment. And I think, maybe for you, it's, when you wove the washi into your denim and you're like, oh, God, I've not seen this.
Yes.
This is the moment, right?
For me,
and you've got to come back to it and go, okay, that's the anchor. And then you build from there and just keep coming back to that. Like that was something that really sparked my like, oh God, that's great. And believe me, there'll be enough people who will also feel that when they see it. I remember when your reel came up for that.
Mm.
I was like, that's really interesting. That's so cool.
Yeah, for me, it's
So
like,
it sparked curiosity for me too.
oh, I'm glad. I'm glad because these things happen in isolation by myself, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm tickled by that, and you have no control over someone else's response to that. But I'm so glad that people do. It just means whatever wavelength I'm on has a resonance.
Yeah, I think those are the things that if they initially ignite something in you, there's usually something there that other people will be attracted to as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm always
Yeah.
very nervous that I'm always looking for that Venn diagram that I can get to do things that I wanted to do and things that people want to buy.
Buy. Yeah, and the bit in the
I
middle
hope that there's
is the
some
magic
sort of,
point.
yeah, that's right.